Kathleen and Douglas Leroy lived with their son Adrian in the small town of Pine Prairie in Louisiana. They were a happy family. The couple had been married 25 long years. Their son was growing up and they were looking forward to a bright future. But everything turned dull when Adrian fell sick with an unusual illness. Doctors labeled it as a mental disease, but something about Adrian's condition said it was much more than that. And when Kathleen went out to search for the true cause behind her son's illness, she was led to consider if he had been suffering from the effects of black magic. And the person suspicious of being responsible? Ursula Bohm. Kathleen tried to get information on her. She learned that this woman was notorious for her peculiarity. Ursula Bohm lived all alone in that broken-down house, not too far from Kathleen. People often saw her going out into the woods, even at strange hours of the night. She rarely came into town, and most of those time only for groceries. Nobody could say what she did for a living or how she afforded herself. People doubted she was involved in things strange and bizarre. Some even called her a witch. The more Kathleen heard the strange rumors, the more she started to fear if it could be true that she performed black magic on her son. So she went to the house of Ursula Bohm. It was after a long wait that a woman wearing strange exotic jewelry and hand-sewn clothes creaked the door open. "Hello, are you Ursula Bohm?" "Yes, how may I help you?" "I'm Kathleen Leroy. You probably won't recognize me, but you might recognize my son Adrian. He came here a few days ago with his friends." I remember a few kids passing by here not too long ago. I spoke to them about what happened, and I apologize if my son happened to misbehave with you, but he's young and naive. Sometimes youngsters make mistakes." "What? No, I didn't think anything of it. It's no big deal. You don't have to apologize." "No, Mrs. Bohm. As his mother, I felt I had to come here. I know my son might have done the wrong thing, but he's a good kid. I didn't want any misunderstandings between us." Yes, of course. When I saw him, I thought the very same. He's a good soul. But please don't embarrass me. This was never an issue." Kathleen hoped that her apology would work to soften the woman's heart, and if she was responsible for what was happening, she would set her son free. But Adrian's condition only got worse. "Mom, it hurts. Make it stop." "Sweetheart, the doctors say you have to rest. Only rest will cure you." "Mom, nothing helps. It won't stop. I feel like I'm going to die every time I feel that piercing, burning pain." "Don't say that, Adrian. You're going to be fine." But Kathleen didn't know what she was going to do about this. The only person she could think of counseling was Mrs. Meridew, Adrian's teacher. "Mrs. Leroy, you're here? Come in. How is Adrian doing?" "Not well, Mrs. Meridew. The doctors haven't been of any help." Kathleen shared what she discovered from Adrian's friends, and how she thought Ursula Bohm had done something wicked. Mrs. Meridew anxiously asked, "Did Adrian eat the apple she gave him?" "No, Mrs. Meridew. His friends say he didn't. This is what I was wondering. How could she have done magic on him if Adrian refused her?" "Yes, Mrs. Leroy. It was many years ago. One of my cousin's children had fallen sick, just like Adrian, behaving strange, speaking odd things, screaming out in pain. Doctors tried everything, but they failed. My cousin was starting to lose hope when she suddenly got news of a man. His name was Professor Henry Connery. He was the one that had cured her child and brought the family out of their misery. And if there's one person who could cure Adrian, it's him. I can speak with my cousin and get you his number." At this point, Kathleen was ready to do anything. It had been days her son had been suffering. She couldn't bear this any longer. When Kathleen returned home, she contacted Professor Connery. "Hello, is this Professor Connery?" "Yes, who am I speaking with?" "I'm Kathleen Leroy. I live in Louisiana with my family. Professor, I've called you in dire hopelessness that you might be able to help me. I've heard that you've helped patients suffering from similar illnesses before, and my son, he is very sick. What has happened to your son? He's been screaming in pain for the past week, and I have a feeling someone has performed black magic on him. Have you taken your son to the doctor? Perhaps he has a disease you're not aware of. No, Professor. I've gone to the doctor. They say he's suffering from hysteria, but I know there's something off about his condition. My son was absolutely healthy before. It all started from the night of the lunar eclipse. He had been experiencing this unusual piercing pain through his body every night, and only at night. Only at night? I see. From the lunar eclipse, Mrs. Leroy, how many days has it been exactly? It's been 6 days. All right, Mrs. Leroy, if this is what I assume it is, we don't have much time. I'll take a flight to Louisiana as soon as I can. Kathleen was relieved when Professor Connery agreed to visit her son. He arrived the following day and booked into a hotel where Kathleen picked him up. After visiting Adrian for himself and hearing whatever had happened, Professor Connery wished to visit Ursula Bohm. However, before Kathleen was to take him there, he warned her, "When we're there, do not eat anything she offers you." So Professor Connery and Kathleen traveled to Ursula Bohm's house that afternoon. But when Ursula opened the door, this time, Kathleen was surprised to see the frightened look on her face when she stared at Professor. There was sweat trickling down her forehead, as if she had seen something horrendous. But Professor Connery was a complete stranger to her. Ursula nervously shifted her gaze to Kathleen. "Kathleen, you again? Is everything okay?" "Mrs. Bohm, we'd like to have a talk with you. May we come in?" "A talk? All right, sure, come in." Ursula took the two inside and sat them down in the living room. Kathleen looked around, searching for clues if this woman was indeed what the people said she was. But her home seemed to look absolutely normal. "Just give me one moment. I'll bring some tea for us." "That will be all right, Mrs. Bohm. Please don't trouble yourself." No, you two are my guests." Professor Connery and Kathleen waited as they heard Ursula tinker around in her kitchen, bringing back a kettle of tea and a tray of cups. "So tell me, how may I help you? Is this your husband, Kathleen?" "No, she's a friend of mine. My name is Henry Connery. I was traveling through town when I heard about her son, so I stopped to visit them." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. How is your son doing now?" Ursula said, pouring out the tea. "Not well, Mrs. Bohm. We were wondering if you could advise us in any way." "Me? I'm just a laywoman. What have the doctors said? Please, Kathleen, take your tea." "Thank you, Mrs. Bohm." Kathleen took the cup in her hands nervously. She hoped Ursula wouldn't pressurize her to drink it. "The doctors actually haven't been able to give us a cure." "Mr. Connery, please enjoy your tea." Kathleen peered a glance at Professor, nodding at Ursula as he placed his keys on the table and picked up the cup. "You see, I don't have much knowledge on these things, but perhaps there is one way I can help. I can prepare a special soup of mine for your son. It has worked miracles. It's my secret recipe." "Really, Mrs. Bohm? And what's the secret ingredient?" "A pinch of love, of course." Ursula let out a laugh. "Why aren't you having your tea? Would you like another spoon of sugar?" "Mrs. Bohm, perhaps you should know the truth is better than sprinkling sugar all over your lies." Professor Connery suddenly took his cup and spilt all the tea out. Kathleen widened her eyes looking at the mess. "Mrs. Bohm, I'm so sorry. I'll help clean it up." "Excuse me, what did you say?" Ursula exclaimed. That's when Professor Connery suddenly took hold of the kettle and threw it onto the ground. Ursula screamed out in rage. "What kind of behavior is this?" Kathleen looked at Professor Connery, feeling a bit aggravated. "What are you doing, Professor?" But Professor Connery didn't heed her words. He looked at Ursula. "Don't you feel shame in all that you do? You seek to harm others. You do black magic to people. Professor, stop this." Ursula stood up in rage and pointed out the door. "I invited you in as guests and you dare insult me? You will get out of my home right now." Kathleen became nervous. She didn't want this woman to become enraged and cause more pain to her son. She quickly took napkins and began cleaning up the mess. "Mrs. Bohm, my son is in pain. We're only trying to find a way to cure him. Try to understand. If you've done something, please heal him." However, as Kathleen went to pick up the kettle, she was horrified by what she saw. The kettle was filled with black nails. What was this? This was when Professor Connery suddenly slipped away and ran towards the stairs. "Move out of the way, you woman!" Ursula screamed out, following him. "Don't you dare! This is my house. If you don't leave right now, I'm going to call the police," she said as she ran to get hold of Professor Connery. That's when Kathleen caught hold of her. "Mrs. Bohm, we don't mean to hurt you. Try to understand. I'm a mother. I can't bear to see my son like this." Professor Connery ran up the stairs. He went into what looked like Ursula Bohm's bedroom and immediately checked under her bed. Right where I thought it would be. Under the bed was a box. Professor Connery pulled it out and opened it. Inside lay a doll. There were pins inserted all over its body, and around its torso were a few strands of hair tied with a leaf. Professor Connery was disturbed seeing the doll resembled none other than Adrian Leroy. "Take this. Enjoy it as a treat from me." Adrian looked at the strange woman. That's all right, miss. I should get going." "Not even for me? It would make me happy if you accept my gift. Please eat the apple." Adrian pulled his hands away, furrowing his brows. "Please, don't touch me. I said I don't want your apple. I'm leaving," he said, freaked out. But just as he was going to turn, the woman suddenly became quite angry. "You can't leave without eating this." Adrian was thundered. What was this woman doing? She put the apple in front of his mouth and urged him to bite. "You can't leave without eating this. You must eat this apple." That day, when Adrian had refused to eat the apple Ursula had offered him, she became enraged and caught hold of his head. Adrian had escaped her grip that day, but what didn't were the strands of his hair that Ursula used to perform black magic on him. Now he would be under her spell, whether he liked it or not. Professor Connery took the doll and returned downstairs to find Kathleen holding on to Ursula. "Your games are over, Ursula." Kathleen looked at the doll in Professor Connery's hand, thundered to recognize it was none other than her son. Seeing the pins inserted within its body, she remembered all the times Adrian had screamed out in pain. Kathleen was filled in anger and disgust. She caught hold of Ursula's hair, throwing her to the floor, and began punching her face in rage. "You wicked witch! I will take your life today. You put your filthy hands on my son. I'll go to jail if I have to, but I won't let an evil woman like you live." But suddenly, Ursula began laughing. In a raspy voice, she said, "You won't be able to do anything to me, you weak, pathetic woman." Ursula pushed Kathleen, throwing her off, and ran into her kitchen. Professor Connery ran after her, but before he could do anything, Ursula ran out her back door into the woods behind her home. Kathleen cried out in despair. "Professor, she's getting away. What will happen to my son?" "Don't worry. Leave her be. She won't be able to do anything without this doll. We don't have much time. The effects will become irreversible a fortnight from the lunar eclipse. That's why I came here as soon as you told me about the symptoms Adrian was having. We have to destroy this doll once and for all." Professor Connery went back inside and picked up his keys from the table. "What were you looking at before? And how did you know Ursula poisoned the tea?" "This? It was just my keychain compass." when I placed it here, started malfunctioning. Metals containing iron can easily deflect your compass needle," he said as he went out the backyard. "But how could you know she put that in there?" "It was just an intuition." Professor Connery took the doll and carefully took out Adrian's hair, placing it into a container. He then dug a hole and placed the doll there before he took out a vial from his pocket and began pouring the liquid over the doll. "What is this, Professor?" "This will work like an acid. Stand back." "It's starting to smoke. It will light on fire by itself and burn till it's nothing but ashes." When there was nothing left of the doll anymore, Professor Connery dispersed the remaining ashes within the soil. "Let's go. Your family must be waiting for you." Kathleen invited Professor Connery back home, where Douglas had been waiting for her eagerly. To her surprise, Adrian was doing well. She didn't know how Professor Connery did it, or how he even knew, but she was utterly grateful to him. "I don't know how to thank you enough, Professor." "Don't worry about it. I'm always there to help someone in need." But after it all, Adrian was safe, sound, and healthy. But the one thing that still bothered Kathleen was the fact that someone else could fall prey to something her son had, because Ursula Bohm was still alive and still out there. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.